William, I'm unhappy. I want a divorce. Her words hit me like a hard blow. I couldn't say I hadn't seen it coming, though. After almost 20 years of marriage, I had noticed that Abigail had been spending a lot of time with her so-called friend, Saren. Far too much, to be honest. Saren, who had a reputation for being a relationship expert, had somehow earned Abigail's trust despite her own history of 3 failed marriages. To Abigail, that made her an authority on the subject. William, are you even listening to me? I said I want a divorce, she repeated, her voice now sharp and impatient. I took a deep breath and let her words sink in. Yeah, Abigail, I heard you, I replied calmly. But I'm not making any hasty decisions. I've tried to be a good husband and father. As far as I knew, things between us were fine, even in the bedroom. So what happened? What went wrong? I let the silence stretch for a moment before continuing. If this marriage isn't working for you anymore, as painful as it is to hear, I'll respect your decision. But tell me, has this been bothering you for a long time, or is this something that just came up? She answered without a second thought. It's been building up for some time. I need space, William. I need to figure out who I am, meet new people. Her words sounded rehearsed, as if she had practiced them over and over. I think, she went on, the court requires a 90-day separation before we can file for divorce. Maybe I'll change my mind by then, and we won't have to go through with it. I nodded slowly, thinking about what others had gone through in similar situations. So, during this 90-day separation, we can both see other people without it being considered cheating, right? And then, after that, if one of us still wants out, we can proceed with the divorce, whether the other agrees or not. Suddenly, it seemed like a light clicked on in her head. She realized I would have the same freedom she was claiming for herself. So, if I file first, I get to decide whether we stay married or not, right? I asked. For the first time, she hesitated. I guess that's true, she muttered, caught off guard. I thought I made it clear that I want a divorce. Look, Abigail, I said, keeping my voice steady. I don't want a divorce. But if that's the route you want to take, I'm not going to stand in your way. To make it fair, though, I'll file too. That way, we're both starting from the same place. Her eyes widened. Wait, so does that mean you actually want a divorce now? She asked, disbelief in her voice. Not exactly, I replied. But it's clear I've failed in some way as your husband, and I'm not going to hold on to something that isn't working for you. For a brief moment, her expression softened, but she didn't apologize. Instead, she said coolly, "You've been a great husband, William, but I want something more, new experiences, more freedom. A separation would give me the chance to find that." Abigail, I said softly, my voice catching, if there's something you need that I can't give, then I guess I was never enough for you. The words hung in the air, bitter and raw. Tell me, I asked after a pause, have you already talked to a lawyer? She waved off my question, brushing it aside like it was unimportant. Not yet, but I plan to see Lucas Clapton. Saren recommended him, said he's great. There was again Saren's influence all over this. I smiled to myself. Well, I think I'll have my cousin Megan handle my side of things, I said casually. Abigail's face twisted in distaste. Ugh, Megan. She's difficult to deal with, William. Maybe, I shrugged. But she's loyal, and she's an incredible lawyer. She'll fight hard for her clients, no matter what. I remembered Megan, tipsy at a family party, joking that she'd represent me for free if I ever needed it. Looks like I might take her up on that offer, I muttered, half joking, but feeling too drained to laugh. All right, I said, flipping through the papers. Let's aim to start the separation at the beginning of the month. That'll give us both some time to get everything in order. Abigail nodded, but her brow furrowed. Why does it matter when we start? Isn't the whole point of a separation to just try life apart? Exactly, I replied. But without a plan, we might end up making a bigger mess. Think of it as a trial run, something to help us figure out if this is really what we want. She hesitated for a moment, then said, okay, maybe. I hadn't thought of it like that. I left her to her thoughts in the bedroom, while I went to the kitchen to make coffee and jot down some notes. By the time she joined me, I was already scribbling. There's a lot we need to sort out, I said, looking up. Let's start with the kids. Her expression darkened. What do you mean? I explained, we need to figure out how we're going to tell them. They need to know this isn't their fault, and we have to be on the same page about it. Abigail bit her lip, looking uneasy. I don't know, William. I don't think they'll take it well. Maybe we should wait the 90 days and see where we stand first. I shook my head, already seeing the flaws in that approach. They're going to notice something's off. We owe it to them to be honest and reassure them. I suggested she stay in the house during the separation to keep things stable for the girls. Maybe we could even spend time together occasionally to make the transition easier for them. But Abigail wasn't having it. How are we supposed to date or live our own lives if we're still under the same roof? William, one of us will end up bitter when the other goes out. Besides, the point of this is to see what life apart is like, not more of the same. She had a point. I couldn't deny it would confuse the girls if either of us started seeing someone new. We both agreed to approach this carefully, especially when it came to explaining things to the kids. They needed to understand we still loved them, even if our marriage was falling apart. We also acknowledged that counseling for the kids might be necessary, but we hoped their natural resilience would help them adjust. Trying to lighten the mood, I joked that if Abigail and I ended up with new partners, the girls might get more grandparents and more gifts at Christmas and their birthdays. But the thought of splitting holidays quickly sobered us. Birthdays, Christmases, Thanksgivings, each would require careful planning from now on. Then, I brought up something even more awkward, discretion. If either of us starts seeing someone new, we'll need to keep that outside the house, I said firmly, especially when the girls are here. Bringing dates home would only confuse them. I saw her face tighten, but after a moment, she reluctantly agreed. The conversation shifted to finances, a topic I knew was unavoidable. We're both going to need to adjust to handling our own expenses, I said, keeping my tone steady. It was clear that running two households would be far more expensive than sharing one, and Abigail's face grew uneasy as the reality sank in. We'll need to divide up the assets and close any joint accounts, I continued. And we'll also need to set up child support to make sure the girls' lives aren't thrown into chaos. Abigail sat there in silence, stunned by how much we had to figure out. There's a lot we need to figure out before we start this separation, I added. I'll start looking for an apartment closer to work so the girls will feel comfortable when they stay with me. I explained how standard visitation worked, every other weekend and holidays for the non-residential parent, but made it clear that wasn't enough for me. I want to stay involved in their daily lives, I said. I'm not just going to show up every couple of weekends. Abigail tilted her head, looking at me curiously. I'm surprised you're not already dating, considering how much you love spending time with the girls, she said, her voice almost teasing. I'm not in any rush to start dating, I replied, brushing off her comment. I'm not planning to disappear from their lives, though. But if you start seeing someone new, you'll need to take on some of the responsibilities I usually handle. We talked through some of the logistics, how midweek visits might be tough with school and homework, the challenges of shuttling the girls between two homes, and how my new place might not be on their bus route. Abigail's irritation grew as it became clear I wasn't going to just fade into the background. This isn't exactly how Saren described things, she muttered under her breath, her frustration boiling over. I could tell she had expected me to just go along with whatever plans she and Saren had made. Now, she was starting to see things wouldn't be that simple. Well, William, she said finally, sounding drained, I need to sleep on all of this. I'm going back to bed. Maybe we'll talk more tomorrow. Sure thing, I replied, watching her walk down the hall. But I wasn't ready to call it a night. I need to get a few more thoughts down before I turn in, I added. As she disappeared into the bedroom, I stayed in the kitchen, jotting down notes in my notepad. When she came out the next morning, Abigail must have assumed I'd stayed up all night working on our divorce checklist. Instead, she found my notepad on the kitchen table and me fast asleep in the guest room. While her breakfast cooked, she started going through my notes. I titled the list Liabilities to Change and broke down everything we'd need to adjust. The mortgage, homeowner's insurance, utilities, gas, water, electricity, cable, cell phones, garbage collection, internet, even subscriptions like Amazon Prime. I thought of everything, right down to car payments and memberships. The sheer volume of it all seemed to irritate her. On the next page, I had outlined projected expenses for my apartment and child support, aiming to keep the girls' lives as close to normal as possible. The numbers weren't good, showing a shortfall every month. I even included ideas for saving money, like cutting out my Waffle House and Starbucks runs, small sacrifices I was ready to make. But Abigail had scribbled her own expenses next to mine. Her gym membership, a women's group she had joined, eating out more often. It didn't look like she had any intention of cutting back. I'd also listed all the household tasks I usually took care of: refueling the car, calling the plumber, fixing the heater, mowing the lawn, grocery shopping, things Abigail would have to handle on her own now. She stared at the list, visibly frustrated, muttering under her breath. Why isn't William doing what he's supposed to? Why won't he just give me what I want? Soon, I heard her whispering into her phone. "Hey, Saren, it's me," she said quietly, try not to wake me. "William's asleep in the other room, so I can talk." Saren's voice came through, upbeat and chipper. "How'd it go? Did he agree to do whatever it takes to keep you?" Instead of triumph, Abigail's voice sounded frustrated. "No," she muttered. "He actually agreed to the divorce without putting up a fight. Then he spent all night making lists of everything I'd have to take over if we go through with it." Her voice dropped lower, but I could still hear her irritation. "William's already planning to move out and live like we're divorced. He's insisting we treat the 90-day separation as a real trial to see if this is what we want." It seemed like Saren's vision of an easy, one-sided divorce wasn't going the way Abigail had hoped. "He doesn't even seem bothered by the idea of a divorce," Abigail admitted, her voice filled with frustration. "It's making me wonder what my next move should be. I really thought he'd be crushed." "Oh, Abigail," Saren replied with a dismissive laugh. "He's bluffing. This is just his way of trying to manipulate you, to make you feel like you can't do this without him. All that talk about is contributions. It's just a guilt trip." Saren's tone shifted to something more cunning. "Don't forget, you've got all the power here. You control two things he cares about: the kids and the bed. Use that to your advantage. Play it right, and soon enough, you'll be with Nathan, and William will be on the sidelines." "I hope you're right," Abigail murmured, though doubt lingered in her voice as she wondered if Nathan was really worth all this. "William hasn't made any bold moves yet. I think I'll hold steady and see what he does next." She glanced up and saw me stirring, so she quickly ended the call. "I have to go, Saren. He's getting up. Talk later." I shuffled into the kitchen, looking disheveled and exhausted. Abigail tried to sound casual. "Hey, want some coffee?" "No, thanks," I replied, rubbing my eyes. "Probably not a good idea this late. I barely slept. Why didn't you come to bed?" Abigail hesitated, studying me. "Why didn't you?" she asked. I leaned against the counter, avoiding her gaze. "I needed some air. Took a walk. Honestly, I didn't trust myself." I finally looked up, my expression conflicted. "When I saw you asleep, all I could think about was how beautiful you looked. But I didn't want us to end up in bed together just because you felt sorry for me." Abigail softened her tone. "William, we're still married. For now, I'm still your wife. Can't we? I mean, shouldn't we be together, at least until the separation is official?" I shook my head slowly, my face heavy with resignation. "I can't pretend everything's fine. You've already told me you're unhappy. As much as it hurts, I have to respect that. I promised to give this separation a real shot, and that's what I'm going to do." I sighed deeply, my shoulders sagging. "I just want you to be happy, Abigail, even if that means I'm not the one who's going to make you happy anymore." Abigail placed her hand gently on William's arm, her voice soft and pleading. "Just because we're separating doesn't mean we'll end up divorced. Can't you give me some time to figure things out? Maybe this space will help us come back stronger." William looked doubtful, but nodded. "Sure, I like to believe that, but I'm not holding my breath." He paused, glancing at the clock. "I'm taking a day off to get a head start on things. Billy can handle the cruise. I'll make calls about splitting finances and setting up my accounts." Before she could respond, he added, "And don't worry about the girls. I'll make breakfast and get them to school." Later that morning, Abigail's mood lightened when Nathan, her charming co-worker, stopped by her office. With his usual flirtatious grin, he suggested they get together to listen to some music. The thrill of his attention sent a rush through her, and her mind drifted back to the heated moment they'd shared in the elevator. For a brief second, she let herself imagine a future with Nathan. But soon, the reality of the separation and the messy state of her marriage crept back into her mind. When Abigail arrived home that evening, she noticed small signs that William had been there: an empty coffee mug on the counter, a jacket hung by the door. Oddly, it gave her a sense of relief. At least he hadn't packed up and disappeared. All right, she thought to herself, 90 days of freedom. We'll stay married, and I'll figure out how to keep things with Nathan under wraps. Sitting at the kitchen table, she flipped through William's notepad. He'd added a few more tasks to their to-do list, but something else caught her eye, a page titled Possible Women for Today. Her stomach churned as she read through the 2 columns. One labeled women who have already expressed interest, and the other women I'd like to know if they're interested. Her blood began to boil when she saw her sister Charlotte's name at the top of the first column. Fuming, she grabbed her phone and dialed Charlotte's number. "Charlotte? What the hell is wrong with you?" she snapped as soon as her sister picked up. "Are you trying to steal my husband?" "What are you talking about?" Charlotte replied, sounding genuinely confused. "William made a list of women who've shown interest in him. And guess whose name is right at the top?" Abigail growled, her voice filled with anger. Charlotte sighed, clearly unbothered. "Oh, that? I told him once, after a few too many drinks, that if he ever left you, I'd be interested. Honestly, Abigail, he deserves better, especially if you're already thinking about someone else." Abigail froze, taken aback. "You're serious? You'd actually go after him?" "Maybe I would," Charlotte replied coolly. "But let me ask you something. What's this about a list? Are things really that bad? Or is William already moving on?" Abigail stammered, feeling defensive. "It's not like that. I just told him I needed time to figure things out." Charlotte snorted. "Right. Figure things out. Sounds like someone's already got someone waiting in the wings. So who is it, Abigail? Nathan? Or someone else?" "There's no one else." Abigail snapped. "We're in a 90-day separation to decide if this marriage is worth saving." "Sure," Charlotte replied dryly. "Well, just so you know, if William ends up single, I'll be the first in line. You're playing a dangerous game, Abigail. Don't be surprised if you lose." Charlotte hung up, leaving Abigail fuming. The thought of her sister moving in on William made her skin crawl. She glanced back at the list, her eyes landing on another name: Grace, William's secretary. Young, beautiful, and a single mom, Grace had that fresh energy that made Abigail feel disposable. What bothered Abigail even more than Charlotte's name on the list were the others. One woman had an M next to her name, clearly indicating she was married. The rest were women from around town, faces she knew. Some worked at William's business, others in places he frequented: the Waffle House waitress, the Starbucks barista, the Walmart clerk. Each one made her stomach churn. Abigail had always known William's psychology degree gave him a sharp eye for reading people, but now she couldn't help but wonder if he'd been inspecting more than plumbing while running his cruise. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. He wasn't just passively going along with the separation. He was already planning his next move. Maybe he was preparing to move on. As she simmered over the implications, William walked into the kitchen, his notes in hand. Abigail's face was tight with anger, and he didn't need to ask why. He could feel the tension rising. Couldn't waste any time lining up a replacement, could you? Abigail spat, her voice dripping with resentment. "And my own sister? Really?" William didn't flinch. "Just keeping up with you. You wanted space to meet new people, so I figured I'd do the same." "What are you talking about?" she huffed, defensive. "I don't have a boyfriend. I just needed space." "Sure. What about Nathan Elmers?" William asked, his eyes locking onto hers with a sharp intensity. Her face faltered. "How do you know about him?" she shot back, trying to sound casual but failing. William shrugged nonchalantly. "Ran into Chloe at Walmart. You know, your boss's secretary? She likes to talk. Don't believe everything she says." Abigail snapped, her mind racing. "So, what exactly did she tell you?" "Oh, nothing much," he replied with a faint smirk. "Just that you and Nathan seem pretty close. Lunches together almost every day, him dropping by your office more than the janitor. He's an old friend from college, Abigail said quickly, trying to wave it off. We're just catching up. That's all. William's expression didn't change. Catching up, huh? Is he part of those new connections you're exploring during the separation? It's not serious, she muttered, her voice growing softer. We've barely done more than talk. He's just someone nice. He compliments me, even on days when I don't feel like myself. Uh-huh, William said, his tone flat. Anything else I should know about him? Abigail hesitated, the memory of their heated moment in the elevator flashing through her mind, but she refused to admit it. At least he's not married, she said sharply, deflecting. William raised an eyebrow. Not married? Have you checked his Facebook lately? Abigail's face drained of color. What are you talking about? I found his profile pretty easily, William said, crossing his arms. Go ahead, take a look for yourself. She didn't need to. The sinking feeling in her chest told her all she needed to know. Is this the same Nathan Elmers? She asked, her voice tight with uncertainty. William nodded. Yep. And what does it say? Married to Hannah. Father of 2. He let the words hang in the air. Actually, just 3 days ago, his wife posted a cute family photo. Guess they're not as over as he thought. Abigail flushed with a mix of embarrassment and anger. He never told me he was married. I would never knowingly ruin someone's marriage. William didn't blink. But ours is fair game. Her mouth opened, then shut. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. Nathan had been the reason she wanted the separation in the first place, but she couldn't let William know that. He's just one of a few people I'm considering, she deflected, trying to maintain control. Besides, you've got a list too. William rolled his eyes. Fine. If we're both out there considering dating, we should probably get tested for STDs, just in case. William, Abigail snapped, her face reddening with both embarrassment and frustration. That's disgusting. It's just being practical, he replied coolly. Not something I was planning on needing, but hey, if this is the path we're on. Abigail fumed silently, but William shifted gears before the tension could reach its breaking point. Anyway, I made some progress on the separation plans. The first of the month is coming fast, and there's still a lot to figure out. Bank accounts, finances, all of it. Oh, she said, forcing her voice to sound casual. William continued, his tone matter of fact. Actually, the big news is about the apartment. Grace, my secretary, works part-time as a night manager at the Royal Arms Apartments. Turns out, there's a 2-bedroom available, close to work. Normally, it'd be pretty pricey, but if I agree to do some maintenance work, I get a 50% discount. Not bad, right? Abigail felt a knot form in her stomach. Not only was William preparing to move out, but he'd also found a setup that would make it easier for him to mingle with other single tenants. And Grace, of all people, would be right there in the mix. This means more money for you and the kids, by the way, William added, still flipping through paperwork. Abigail narrowed her eyes. You haven't signed the lease yet, have you? No, not yet, he answered. But Grace has already offered to pull some strings to make it a short-term deal, just for the 90 days. She's been pretty helpful. Abigail's jaw tightened. I'm sure she has. William smirked, sensing her irritation. She even suggested that if the separation became permanent, she might step down to avoid a conflict of interest. Said she'd be open to exploring things with me if the timing was right. Surprised me. Honestly, she's a lot younger, and I didn't think she'd see me that way. Abigail clenched her fists, biting back a retort. Well, she said, her voice tight, maybe if we stay open-minded, this separation won't turn into a divorce after all. William didn't take the bait. We'll see. Oh, and there's one more thing I need to mention. What now? Abigail asked, bracing herself. He looked her square in the eye. I had 2 tickets booked for Hawaii. 10 days. It was supposed to be a surprise for our 20th anniversary. Abigail's face lit up immediately. Hawaii? Oh, William, you know how long I've dreamed of going there. I can already picture the beaches, the ocean, everything. She smiled wide, her excitement bubbling over. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But William didn't smile back. His face stayed neutral, almost cold. Here's the thing, he started. When you brought up the divorce, it hit me that we might not even make it to our 20th anniversary. I tried to cancel the trip, but it was too late, and they only offered a partial refund. Abigail's smile disappeared, replaced by a sinking feeling. So, no Hawaii? William shook his head. Not for us, no. I figured the trip meant more to you than it ever did to me. So I had them change the tickets to your name and left the second spot open for a guest of your choice. If there's someone new in your life, feel free to take him. It's all expenses paid. Abigail's face went from shock to disappointment. But I wanted to go with you, William. Can't we call off this separation? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm not as unhappy as I thought. His voice softened, but his words remained firm. Abigail, I've thought about this a lot, too. And the truth is, I don't think I can ever forget how quickly you were ready to leave me. Even if you change your mind now, you can't unsay the words or erase the image of you and Nathan that's stuck in my head. He swallowed hard, his voice thickening. I'm moving forward with a divorce. But that doesn't mean I won't be a full-time dad to our girls. He turned and walked upstairs, leaving Abigail staring at the floor, her mind reeling. For the first time, she felt like she had lost control of everything. There was only one person she could call. She grabbed her phone and dialed. Saren, she said, her voice trembling. It's all falling apart. William's already found an apartment. His skinny secretary is practically throwing herself at him, and my own sister wants to date him. And now, he's giving away our Hawaii trip. Told me to take my new boyfriend instead. What am I supposed to do? Saren's voice was brisk. Hold on. What's the problem here? You could take Nathan and have the time of your life. Sun, surf, and someone who actually excites you. Abigail shook her head, even though Saren couldn't see it. No, Saren. Nathan is married. His wife and kids are moving here soon. I can't go to Hawaii with him. I want to go with William. Saren laughed darkly. Wow, William's smarter than I thought. This Hawaii thing? It's not what it seems. He's trying to guilt trip you, Abigail. He wants to make you feel bad enough to back off from the divorce. It's manipulation, plain and simple. Abigail's frustration boiled over. I never thought he'd pull something like this. But you're right. He's going to regret it. Thank you, Saren. I almost gave in, but not now. William's going to pay for this. She hung up just in time to see William coming down the stairs, a small suitcase in hand. Her anger flared up again. Oh, are we already pretending you're moving out? She sneered. Fine by me. Goodbye and good riddance. William raised an eyebrow. Actually, I'm just taking a few things to the apartment ahead of time. Grace offered to let me move in early since it's already vacant. I figured it'd be easier for the girls if I didn't pack everything at once. His voice remained calm, but there was a sharpness to it. Let me guess, you've been talking to Saren. Saren's a divorce expert. Abigail snapped. She gets what I'm going through, unlike you. And she saw right through your little Hawaii trick, too. She knows you're just trying to guilt me into staying, but it's not going to work. I still want the divorce, and I'm going to see it through. William's expression remained calm. You're right, Abigail. I'm sure you'll have no trouble finding someone else who can meet your needs. His voice lowered slightly, more serious now. I always consider myself lucky to have a beautiful wife, a great partner in raising our girls, and, until recently, a loyal spouse. Her face flushed with anger. Stop with the act, William. I know there was no Hawaii trip. It was just another one of your games. William tilted his head slightly, unimpressed. Believe what you want, but if you really think I'm lying, let's settle this. He pulled out his phone and began dialing. Hi, Carmen. It's William Albertson. My wife's here, and she has questions about the Hawaii trip. Could you explain the details? Abigail froze as Carmen's voice came through on the other end. She sounded cheerful, even sympathetic. Mr. Albertson, it's good to hear from you. I hope I can help. Mrs. Albertson, what would you like to know? Abigail's voice was tight as she asked. Can you describe what this trip includes? Of course, Carmen replied enthusiastically. It's a 10-day, two-island adventure. You'll stay at top-rated hotels, with all meals, transportation, and activities included. There's even a traditional luau, hula lessons, and options for surfing and snorkeling. It's a romantic package, perfect for couples. Many of our clients say it strengthens their relationships. Abigail, try to keep her voice steady. When did my husband book this trip? Let me check, Carmen said, sounding professional. Ah, here it is. He made the initial inquiry 3 months ago, finalized it 2 months ago, and paid in full shortly after. He called just yesterday to cancel. Unfortunately, we could only offer a partial refund. I was surprised when he asked to transfer the tickets to your name and suggested you take someone else. He must care about you deeply. Abigail clenched her jaw. Thank you, she said through gritted teeth before hanging up. She stared at the floor, her mind spinning. William wasn't lying. He really had planned the trip. And now, she realized he had turned what should have been a romantic gesture into a final, painful reminder of everything that had gone wrong. Abigail's eyes narrowed into a glare. So, you think you've outsmarted me, don't you? You and Carmen cooked up this whole Hawaii scheme just to make me feel guilty, hoping I'd back down. Well, I figured you out, William. William shook his head, looking more exhausted than angry. Abigail, you might want to call your parents. That stopped her in her tracks. What do they have to do with this? Who do you think was going to watch the girls while we were gone? William asked, pulling out his phone. He dialed, and Abigail's mother picked up almost immediately. Hello, William. How are the girls? She asked warmly. Abigail stepped closer. Hi, Mom, she said hesitantly, her voice uncertain. William put the phone on speaker, and her father's voice joined in from the background. Benjamin, it's William and Abigail, her mother called excitedly. Pick up the phone. Benjamin's voice came through, curious. What's going on, you two? Abigail stayed silent, and William took the lead. Well, Abigail knows about the Hawaii trip now, so there's no need to keep it a secret anymore. Oh, son, we're so sorry you can't make it, her mother replied, her sympathy clear. You didn't explain much when you called earlier. I hope everything's okay, her father added. We were really looking forward to having the girls here for those 10 days. Abigail, I know how much you wanted this trip. Have you decided who you'll take with you? Abigail's face flushed as she stammered. No, Mom, I haven't thought about that yet. Trying to regain her composure, she asked, when did William tell you about this trip? I think it was around New Year's, wasn't it, Benjamin? Her mother replied. He wanted to make sure we had enough time to prepare for the girls. You know how much they love snacks. She chuckled lightly, as if this were just another fun family conversation. But then her tone turned more serious. William, she asked carefully, is everything okay with you two? When you called earlier, you seemed off. Did something happen? Abigail, her father's voice hardened. Are you two splitting up? Abigail scrambled for control. Mom, Dad, no, it's not like that. We're just taking some space. A little separation to recharge the marriage and then reconnect. William's jaw tightened, and his voice cut in firmly. I'm not going to lie to your parents, Abigail. They've always been honest with me. Her mother's voice cracked. Abigail? Honey, is that true? Are you really starting a divorce? Abigail rushed to soothe her. Mom, please don't get upset. I just wanted some time to figure things out, to work on myself. For William, for the girls, for all of us. Her father wasn't buying it. That's a load of nonsense, Abigail. Is there someone else? Is that why you're doing this? No, Dad, she whispered, her voice barely audible. There's no one else. Her father's disappointment hit hard. We raised you to value family, Abigail. Don't think for a second we'll be welcoming some new man into our lives. William, you're like a son to us. We're so sorry. Just promise us we'll still get to see the girls after all this. Before William could respond, Abigail jumped in, desperate to shift the conversation. This is all being blown out of proportion, she said quickly, her voice cracking. I'm taking all back. No separation. No divorce. I'll call you later, Mom, when things calm down. William looked at her with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. Pull yourself together, Abigail. The girls will be home soon. He grabbed his suitcase and headed toward the door. Wait, she said, reaching out. Where are you going? I just said I don't want a divorce. You don't have to leave. William turned to face her, his voice steady but resolute. You decided you wanted a divorce, Abigail. You didn't talk to me, didn't give me a chance. And now, because it's not going the way you planned, you think you could just take it all back? That's not how this works. I have a voice too. And after everything I've learned about you this past week, I'm not so sure staying married is the right choice anymore. Abigail's face twisted with desperation. William, please don't go. This was a mistake. I know I messed up, but we can put behind us. Things were good before, weren't they? We were happy. I don't want to lose everything over one bad decision. William sighed deeply, his expression unreadable. Maybe we were happy, but I can't forget what you said, that you were unhappy and ready to start something with Nathan. Intent matters, Abigail. As far as I'm concerned, that was emotional infidelity at the very least. He paused, his voice sharp as he continued. Megan mentioned she could have the divorce papers drawn up by tomorrow. You could be served at work, right in front of Nathan, if that's how you want to play this. Her voice turned cold. I won't sign them. William shrugged. Doesn't matter. Once you're served, the process moves forward. Maybe your boss should know about you and Nathan. I imagine your company has rules about office relationships. Her face went pale. Why are you being so cruel? She whispered, tears brimming. I love you. You love me. William's gaze softened slightly, but his words remained firm. I love the woman I married. I'm not so sure who you are anymore. With that, he turned and walked out, leaving Abigail standing there, her carefully constructed plans unraveling. For the first time, she realized she might have lost control for good. Why are you doing this, William? Why go to such extremes? Abigail's voice cracked, her desperation palpable. Isn't there anything I could do to fix this? You said yourself that divorce would hurt both of us. Can't we avoid all that pain? Please, just give me one more chance. I swear I'll never bring up divorce again if you stay. William remained silent, his expression unreadable. Abigail's heart raced as she clung to the faint hope that he might reconsider. I'll be the best wife, she promised, her words tumbling out in a rush. I'll never even glance at another man. I've given you 2 beautiful kids, stood by you while you built your business, even when it meant late nights and weekends away. William, I'm proud of everything we've built together. Everyone makes mistakes. Please, don't let this be the end. William finally broke the silence, his voice measured and calm. All right, he said, here's what I'll do. I'll take my suitcase and sleeping bag to the apartment, but I'll come back at 7. Between now and then, there are a few things I need you to do. Abigail's face lit up with hope. Yes, anything. Just tell me what you need. William's eyes locked onto hers, his tone firm. First, I want a written apology. And I mean a real one. No excuses, no justifications. Second, you need to tell Nathan to never contact you again. Make it clear that if he does, there will be consequences for him and possibly your company. Third, I want a list of reasons why I should stay married to you. He paused, his face darkening. And last, you'll need to call Saren and end things with her. Permanently. I don't want her influence in our lives anymore. That's non-negotiable. Do you understand? Abigail nodded quickly, determination rising within her. Yes, William. I'll do everything you asked. I'll have it ready by 7. William gave a small nod and left, his face guarded. As the door closed behind him, Abigail took a deep breath. Her mind swirled with thoughts of the tasks ahead. Breaking ties with Saren would be the hardest, but to her surprise, the idea brought a strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, Abigail realized how toxic Saren's presence had been. She picked up her phone and dialed. Saren, she said, her tone firm. I need to tell you something. She paused for a breath before continuing. Listening to you was the worst decision I ever made. Because of you, I almost lost my family. Don't call me, don't text, don't email. And if I see you in public, don't even look at me. We're done. Before Saren could respond, Abigail hung up, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. Next, she dialed Nathan. Nathan, she said curtly, I'm ending all contact. My husband has made it clear that if you try to reach me again, legal action could follow. And if I hear from you, I'll be calling your wife. Do not test me. Nathan tried to argue, but Abigail cut him off and ended the call. For the first time in weeks, she felt a surge of satisfaction. Finally, she sat down to write her apology and list of reasons for saving her marriage. Memories of her life with William, once taken for granted, now felt precious. The words came easily as she reflected on their years together. Her guilt deepened as she realized how close she'd come to losing the man who had always stood by her. At exactly 7, Abigail sat waiting, her heart pounding. When William walked in, he didn't have his suitcase. His face was unreadable as she handed him the papers, her hands trembling slightly. William read through her words in silence. His eyes misted over, and for a moment, Abigail thought she'd reached him. She moved to embrace him, but he held up a hand. "Abigail," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I can see you put a lot of thought into this. And it's impressive." He sighed deeply, looking at her with a mix of sadness and affection. "But I don't think you fully understand the damage this has done. I can't just erase what's happened or pretend things can go back to the way they were. I still think the divorce might be necessary." Abigail's face crumpled as her legs gave way, and she sank to the floor, her sobs filling the room. "I've ruined everything," she choked out. "I've destroyed our family. I don't deserve to live." William knelt beside her, his voice soft but firm. "Now you understand how I felt." He stood and turned toward the door but paused, looking back at her. "During the separation, are we allowed to see other people?" he asked, his voice gentler now. Abigail looked up, confused, her tears subsiding for a moment. Yes, I suppose," she said cautiously. William's expression softened. "Then, what are your plans for Friday night?" Abigail blinked, unsure of what he meant. "What do you mean?" she whispered. He smiled faintly. "If we're supposed to be figuring things out, would you like to have dinner with me? Maybe catch a movie?" Her eyes widened in disbelief. "You're asking me on a date?" William's smile grew slightly. "Yes, I think our old relationship might be gone, but maybe we could try starting fresh." A rush of hope flooded Abigail's chest as she jumped to her feet, her heart racing. "Yes, William, 1,000 times yes." If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe to the channel.